Gaming phones have been around for a while now, but it's really only the past few years that they've started to really come into their own. Yeah, we had gaming phones before that, but they were basically just phones with really good specs, but not much else. Newer models are much bolder about being gaming-first devices. The RedMagic 6S Pro is a perfect example of this. Not only does it pack some serious punch in the chipset and hardware department, but it's chock full of gaming features, not to mention some serious style. Mobile games are getting more demanding all the time, but fortunately the RedMagic 6S Pro is spec'd to keep up. The core is the flagship Snapdragon 888 Plus chipset at the heart of the phone, which uses a 3 GHz Kryo 680 CPU and an Adreno 660 GPU. RAM and onboard storage depend on which model you pick. But even the base model packs an impressive 12 gigs of LPDDR5 RAM and 128 gigs of storage. You can also opt for 16 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, which is what our review unit came with. You also get some serious flagship phone features, like an in-display fingerprint reader and a built-in heart rate monitor. Sure, these are nice to have, but what makes the RedMagic 6S Pro stand out as a gaming phone? One major aspect here is its cooling and ventilation, which we'll look at a little later. But one thing that really makes the 6S Pro stand out is the game-specific shoulder sensors. These aren't buttons, but touch-sensitive areas on the right side of the phone. In shooters like Call of Duty Mobile, these provide a massive advantage in terms of control. The first thing you'll notice about the RedMagic 6S Pro is the design. Especially with our review model, which came in the cyborg finish, the exterior is striking to say the least. Somewhat reminiscent of a gaming PC, the back of the 6S Pro is partially transparent. This lets you get a good look inside your phone in case you really want to admire that Snapdragon 888 Plus. The transparent back also provides a look at the RGB fan inside the phone, assuming it's running at the time, of course. This is another nod to the gaming PC aesthetic, though it's far from a cosmetic-only detail. You can tell a significant amount of work was put into the airflow of this phone, and that fan sits at the heart of it. As you'd probably expect, the 6S Pro's operating system and its interface lean heavily into gaming. The OS is a modified version of Android 11. Much of what you'd expect to find in an Android phone is here, with a flashy skin by RedMagic adding a fun feel. Of course, they didn't just slap a skin on plain old Android 11 and call it a day. You also get multiple game-specific features, not the least of which is the game space. A red slider on the left of the phone activates the game space, which turns the interface of the phone into something more like you'd see on a game console. This software automatically catalogs the game you have installed on your phone, letting you launch them all from one place. GameSpace also lets you tweak various phone settings to squeeze out the maximum game performance from your phone. The display is one of the hallmark features of the RedMagic 6S Pro. While high refresh rate and variable refresh rate phones are becoming more common, RedMagic has still packed some nice features into this 6.8-inch AMOLED display. Not content with the already fast 144 Hz refresh rate on the RedMagic 5S Pro, the refresh rate here has been bumped up to 165 Hz. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really see a huge difference, but I could feel it, especially in games, and that's part of the reason why it's so handy that the refresh rate is actually left up to you here. If you're just replying to a few emails and browsing the web, the 60 Hz rate will help save on battery life. If you'd rather have smoother scrolling, bump it up to 90 or even 120 Hz. For maximum game performance, stick with 165 Hz. In another nice game-specific detail, the touch sampling rate on the display is much faster than the actual refresh rate. The sampling rate here goes up to 720 Hz, 720 times per second, meaning lightning-quick response times in games, which can give you a leg up on opponents. Now, there are two major aspects of the RedMagic 6S Pro when it comes to audio that are worth mentioning. The first is that it supports DTS-X Ultra. This means it sounds just as good as it looks when you're using your phone for watching movies or playing compatible games. The second is that in addition to the built-in stereo speakers, the RedMagic 6S Pro still has a traditional 3.5mm headphone jack. If you've got a set of wired headphones that you love, this is a big deal and you know it. To put a number on the performance in the RedMagic 6S Pro, we turned to 3D Mark, specifically the wildlife benchmark that the app suggested when we launched it. Watching the RedMagic 6S Pro rip through the test at an average frame rate of 35.4 frames per second was impressive. When the benchmark was done, the RedMagic 6S Pro received a score of over 5,900. Turning to actual games, we ran through Genshin Impact's large landscapes and a few frantic matches of Call of Duty Mobile at ultra settings. These are both games that ran extremely well on older RedMagic models, so it wasn't a surprise to see how well they ran here. It may be a somewhat older game, but racing through Asphalt 9 Legends set to high quality with 60 frames per second mode enabled was just as fun as always. And the 6S Pro should have enough horsepower on tap to keep playing impressive new games as they come out for quite some time. The shoulder triggers, which you can customize to replicate tapping or pressing any part of the screen, are the RedMagic 6S Pro's secret weapon. These have a 450 Hz touch sampling rate for lightning fast reaction times. Now, of course, a powerful chipset means you need quite a big battery in order to keep feeding it. And the RedMagic 6S Pro has that covered with its sizable 5050 mAh battery. A few years ago, this would have meant that the phone would take forever to charge, but thanks to the 66-watt air-cooled quick charging, that isn't the case with the 6S Pro. A full recharge takes less than an hour. Even better, with charge separation enabled, you can run the phone with just USB-C power, bypassing the battery. This both saves battery life and helps keep your phone cool at the same time. The main camera shoots 64 megapixel images at an aperture of f1.8, while the 120-degree ultra-wide lens shoots 8 megapixel images at f2.2. Colors are vivid but remain on the more realistic side of the spectrum. A third micro lens makes close-ups even easier to take. Now when it comes to video, you can shoot up to 8K resolution at 30 frames per second. For faster motion, you can shoot up to 60 frames per second at 4K or 1080p resolution. As is the case with pretty much any smartphone camera these days, you have easy access to different modes like video and night mode within the camera app. Now switching to Pro mode in the camera gives you much more fine-grained control over ISO, focus, shutter speed, and more. If you're used to shooting on DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, the extra options here will be very welcome. Now, as with any phone, the RedMagic 6S Pro isn't going to appeal to everybody, but in this specific case, if you're not excited about the 6S Pro, you may just not be interested in a gaming phone, period. Yes, the visual style is bold, but that's actually going to be a selling point for as many people as it's a turnoff for. The combination of specs, style, and game-focused features make the RedMagic 6S Pro a treat to use when it's game time. Once it's time to get down to business, yeah, the 6S Pro holds its own just fine, but it's always ready for a quick 5 minutes of gaming on the side.